How do you go from sharing the incredible emotional experience of what a poem does to analyzing how the poem does that without destroying that effect? As E.B. White has more famously said in his discussion of analyzing humor is like dissecting a frog. Few people are interested, and the frog dies because of it. So, can we kill that enjoyment by overanalyzing it? Perhaps for some people we can. There will be a few people who are deeply interested in this, but how do we keep this engaging for the rest of students so that they're both learning and experiencing the joy of poetry? Well, unlike the formula for the pigment Egyptian blue, there is no exact science for this, but here are two things I would try in the classroom. First is sort of a group work creative response. And then next would be maybe a group work competition, like a scavenger hunt sort of experience. And see if by keeping students working together, trying new things, maybe even competing with each other, we can keep up that energy and excitement and learning will happen within that. Will it be perhaps as the sort of learning that would go into memorizing material for a quiz? Maybe not. But will it be something that students remember and carry with them for a longer amount of time? If you can get that emotional engagement, a lot of times it carries further and has more applications for them beyond just the sort of quizzes and work that is done in the classroom with that poem alone. So, here are things I might try. First, let's go back to our book. Verse is a really important thing that you can teach with Carver Life and Poems because these verses don't look anything like the verses that students are used to with nursery rhymes that, as it says in the title, have these rhyme schemes and these rhythms that are almost lyrical or musical and very contained. These are free verse poems that are unrhymed. So how is verse working? Well, first have students together in a group figure out where are the verses, and it's where we've got the visual gaps, right? Which means we have two long verses and then one very short one. Then this would be a sort of creative assignment. See if students could regroup this material and would it create a different meaning? Having them create something in response to someone else's artwork, that is, create sort of their own art, responsive art, can help them think about why the author or artist made the decisions that they did. So if we're thinking about why did Nelson make these sorts of breaks in a poem, and I had the wrong poem there, these sorts of breaks in this poem, having students make different breaks and find different things would then turn back to, okay, so why did Nelson make those breaks in the first place? And you could then conclude the discussion with something like this, but have the students begin with their own creative activity. Then another huge one for a poem like this is language, because the language shifts between scientific terminology and colloquial words. How to get what that is doing for students, what those words even mean, is where you would need to start. And this would be a great activity for sort of a scavenger hunt. And instead of giving the students the definitions the way I've given them here, having them actually have to go and look these up, maybe even using phones if those are allowed in your classroom, having them in a timed group, competitive sort of experience, coming up with as many definitions as they can, is something that can keep that enjoyment there and a sense of discovery. Because as students are discovering for themselves what these words mean, there is an excitement that carries on and helps them continue to engage with the fun of the poem, the art, even as they're understanding how and why that art works. So think about that sort of thing too as you are thinking about activities. You don't just need to make sure that students hit certain learning goals. Part of the joy of a class like this is that you can think about, how can I create wonder? How can I create enjoyment? How can I help students feel sort of feelings I have and make the connections I had that were so important to me way beyond the classroom, long after I forgot exactly what iambic pentameter was, I felt these things, experienced these things, and continue to go back to that poem and be inspired by it. That's another sort of learning that you want to create in whatever sort of space you are working with students, whether it's a classroom or a library or something else entirely, is sharing joy.